So, exactly. Within this NeoIPC project as Work Package 5 team, we developed a surveillance system that focuses on hospital-acquired infections, multi-drug resistant bacteria, and antibiotic use for neonatology units. And this surveillance system is completely free to use. You can either use it locally in paper format via data sheets and materials we upload on our web page without theoretically submitting any information to the NeoIPC project, manually making data analysis and benchmarking. But if you like to make it more technologically and practically, you can use the online platform, web platform for data submission. So before I start, I would like to show you that, so maybe I can open the pointer. I would like to show you that we have a surveillance section in our webpage, surveillance.org, neoipc.org. When you enter this section, you can find every information, protocols, data sheets, manuals, training materials we publish for NeoIPC surveillance system on this page. Yes, the methods, how we collect data on what we exactly monitor and observe. As said at the beginning, we are focusing on hospital-acquired infections, including device-associated infections, secondary bloodstream infections, and surgical site infections. And we don't only collect data on infections itself, but also collect the data, about the risk factors and protective factors that are related to these infections, such as device usage, catheter usage, intubations, antibiotic use, and under protective factors, we can count obviously kangaroo care and human milk. So that's a quick summary of what kind of data we collect. The first line, you see the patient data collection. That is our denominator data. This is basically the data that we should collect. We collect from each patient that is eligible for NeoIPC surveillance system. This data includes the demographic data of the patient, duration of stay, antibiotic use, device usage, etc. And if one of the patients in our denominator data pool later develops a hospital-acquired infection, that would be our numerator data. And this data consists of infection type, the symptoms, laboratory results, device association, etc. So before I talk a little bit more in detail about our data set, data elements, I would like to point out that we have not so much time today, so I cannot explain every data element, what exactly means and what are the definitions. So in our surveillance protocol, under section 5, you find the data dictionary, and there we try to explain every data element exactly what that does that mean, and partially also with examples and explanatory links. So please be sure, if you have questions about the data element we're asking for you to collect, be sure that you check data dictionary first. So yes, I would like to start with patient data collection. As I said, if you're, that's the data that we should collect from each eligible patient that is admitted to your department. So eligible patient for NeoIPC eligibility. What does that mean? I start with this. If the patient is admitted to your department within 120 days of birth, and their gestational age is under 32 weeks, that is an eligible patient for NeoIPC. That's a patient that you should enroll in NeoIPC system and should follow up during the surveillance period, follow-up period. If you don't know the gestational age of the patient, or it's above 32 weeks, but the birth weight of the patient is less than 1,500 grams, this patient is still eligible for the surveillance system. If your patient doesn't meet both of these criteria, that's an ineligible patient. You shouldn't submit this patient into the system. The stillborn babies, delivery room deaths, or the patients that were admitted to your department after 120 days of life are also ineligible for NeoIPC surveillance system. So now you have your eligible patients, you enrolled them into the system, and you should follow up the patients for the surveillance purposes. So the question is how long you should follow up these patients. The follow-up period for NeoIPC is from enrollment until death, discharge, or transfer. The longer leaves, longer than 48 hours, cannot be ignored. So you should discharge and re-enroll the patient if the patient is again admitted. Short leaves can be ignored and you can keep on collecting data. So after you enroll the patient, admit to your department, you must basically fill these two data sheets. The master data collection sheet consists of the data that the patient data collection is that baseline data, basic data, and the patient progress chart is a data sheet that you should use to follow up your patients. Theoretically, you can avoid to use all the paper data sheets, and you can directly enter all the data you collect into the online platform. Except the patient progress chart, it contains a lot of detailed data. So to follow up your patient, you have to use this patient progress chart either on computer or in paper form. So in this slide, you see the master data collection sheet. As you see, it has 3 sections: enrollment, admission information, surveillance end. The first 2 sections you should fill at the admission, enrollment at the admission information. As you see, enrollment part contains some demographic data of the patient, and then here under the admission, some details about the admission. You can, as I said, directly enter this data into the online platform. This is a screenshot from an online platform. This is the enrollment page, and this is the admission page after you enroll the patient. Here, I would like to point out this line, NeoIPC patient identifier. When you enroll a patient into the system, the platform will ask you this patient identifier, and this is an identifier ID of the patient, NeoIPC ID, that you should assign to your patient, that you'll only use in the NeoIPC system. So we don't ask you to enter the patient name or the birth date or hospital ID of the patient. You should just use this NeoIPC patient identifier. And after you do it, we strongly recommend you to have to keep a table, pseudonymization table, where you enter both the NeoIPC ID of your patient and the patient data, like hospital ID, name, date of birth. So you can, in case this patient is enrolled, re-enrolled again, readmitted to your hospital again, or in case you need to go back to the records and correct some errors or check some things, you can re-identify your patient in the NeoIPC system using the NeoIPC ID matching these 2 IDs. The templates for pseudonymization you can find on our website in different formats. So this data sheet is our second data sheet I was talking about, the patient progress chart. This is the data sheet you should use to follow up your patients day by day. Here on the top part, you see some information about the patient, and here the month and year and the chart number. So for each month, for each patient, you need 1 chart. This is the chart number 1. This is the month that your patient was admitted to your department, July 2023. So this is chart number 1. If your patient stays also in August, then you would need a second chart. Here, the first line, there are the patient days. If you see this top line from first to the last of the month, these are the calendar days. So each day that patient stayed in your department, you should put a sign here. You should mark this day. In this example, the patient was admitted in your department on 1st of July and stayed until 23rd of July and then was discharged. So here you start to mark here from the day 1 until the day 23rd. Here is important to know no minimum duration of stay is required. 1 hour, your patient can stay in the department 1 hour or all day. It's still counted a patient day, even if the patient stayed for a short time. So the next 4 lines are about the devices we have in our data set: central venous catheter, peripheral venous catheter, invasive ventilation, and non-invasive ventilation. For device usage, we have a minimum requirement, which is 12 hours a day. So if your patient had a device on that day and that device stayed on your patient for minimum 12 hours, you should count that day as a device day. Human milk days are the days in which your patient received human milk, including own mother's milk, donor milk, fortified breast milk, and you shouldn't count the days where your patient received mixed milk, formula plus human milk. Kangaroo care days are the days in which your patient received skin-to-skin contact for at least 2 hours with a person with mother, father, a caregiver. Doesn't matter, but importance is at least 2 hours and skin-to-skin contact. Probiotic days are the days where your patient, in which your patient received probiotics, regardless of the doses and amount. Probiotics that contain at least lactobacillus or bifidobacterium species. And antibiotic days are the days in which your patient received systemic antibiotics. The days your patient received multiple antibiotics are still 1 antibiotic day. You should count that day still as 1 day. Here in this section, in the following lines, you see detailed information about what antibiotic and which days your patient received that antibiotic. But on the bottom, on the top line, you see even the days that your patient received 2 antibiotics are still only 1 antibiotic day. So at the end of each month, you should sum all these numbers, all these lines, and enter them in the last column, which is T, total values. For example, the patient stayed 23 days. It has 23 patient days, 8 CVC days, 13 PVC days. At the end of each month, you enter these total values in this last column, and these numbers should go then the surveillance end section of the master data collection sheet. So this section should be completed upon discharge, transfer, or death of the patient. So when the follow-up ends. In our example, the patient was admitted on the 1st day of July and discharged on the 23rd of July. So we used only 1 chart. So the numbers of that chart directly comes here. But if patients stayed also in August, then you would have counted also the numbers of August and entered the total values of July and August here. So that was it for the master data, the progress chart. Now I would like to quickly talk about the surgeries. We also collect data on surgical site infections. So that means when an eligible patient in your data pool has a surgery, undergoes a surgery, you should also collect data on this surgery using the surgical procedure data sheet or directly into the platform. Here is a screenshot of the surgical procedure data sheet. I will not talk a lot about it in detail. I just would like to show you one thing. You'll see these procedure codes that we ask for procedure codes in our datasheet, and you will not find any procedure code in the protocol. To find out this procedure code, you should use this ICHI coding tool that is developed by World Health Organization. When you click on this link, you find this link also on the protocol. This page will open, and here you see there's a search bar where you can write a keyword of the procedure that patient had, and then you'll see a list of procedures that will probably match with the procedure your patient had. So you'll find the most accurate one and then enter its code here in this section. You can record up to 3 procedures in one event, one data sheet, but you need to assign one of them as main procedure. So, and this is a screenshot of online platform of surgical procedure event. So when you record a surgery, you should follow up your patient for a surgical site infection over a period to see if your patient developed a surgical site infection due to this procedure. This follow-up period is, in most of cases, 1 month, is 30 days. We have 3 kinds of surgical site infections, depending on the level of the infection. That can be superficial, deep incisional, organ space, SSI. But if an implant was used during the procedure and left in place, with implant, I mean vascular prostheses, screws, wires, meshes that are probably not so common in neonatologic patients, but still, if implant was used, the follow-up period extends to 90 days for deep incisional and organ space SSI. For superficial surgical site infections, is always 30 days. So within this follow-up period, if your patient has another procedure in the same area, a revision procedure, or your patient dies or is transferred or discharged, the follow-up period ends. You don't have to follow up the patient anymore, except in case of revision procedure, a new follow-up period would start. In this slide, I would like to talk about devices we have in our data set. As I said, we collect data on device-associated infections, so it's important to know the definitions of devices we have. We have 2 types of catheter, vascular catheters, which are central venous catheter and peripheral venous catheter. Central venous catheters are basically the catheters that are placed into great vessels. Here are the examples, and peripheral ones are placed in the peripheral veins. You can find these examples and detailed information also in the protocol. Importance is for every device we have in our data set, we have this minimum 12 hours usage rule to call a day a device day. So in case your patient had simultaneously same type of vascular catheters on a day, so for example, 2 PVCs on both arms simultaneously, you should count that day still as 1 PVC, 1 peripheral vascular catheter day. In case the patient had 2 different types of catheters on the same day, like 1 CVC and 1 PVC simultaneously, you should count that day both as a PVC day and a CVC day. The further devices we have are the ventilation devices, the respiratory support devices, invasive mechanical ventilation, and non-invasive ventilatory support. With invasive mechanical ventilation, we mean that respiratory support that your patient received via endotracheal tube or tracheostomy tube, and with non-invasive, we mean CPAP and high-flow nasal cannula. So a day can be either invasive ventilation day or a non-invasive ventilation day due to the 12 hours usage rule. So that was nearly it about the patient data collection. Now I would like to briefly talk about infection data collection. So as I said, we are focusing on hospital-acquired infections. We have 4 types of mandatory infections, the infections that is mandatory to report, submit when they occur, that are primary sepsis / bloodstream infections, pneumonia, necrotizing enterocolitis, and surgical site infections. As the 5th infection, we have the secondary bloodstream infection that is optional to record. You can choose if to collect data on that or not. Secondary bloodstream infections, important to say, that occur secondary to pneumonia, necrotizing enterocolitis, or surgical site infections. So here are the screenshots of our infection data collection sheets. For each infection, we have one data sheet. And this is a screenshot from the online platform. Also for infections, you can either use first the data sheet and then enter this data into the online platform, or you can directly enter the data into the online platform. Here, as you see, when you clicked on add an event, you will find the infections and events that you can create in the online platform. For example, if you click on primary sepsis, new pages will open, windows will open where you can enter the related data and submit. So I would like to show you a quick example using the pneumonia infection data collection sheet if you use infection data sheets. Here you see there are infection relevant information criteria that you should enter, such as infection date, if device association exists, if organisms were identified, if yes, what kind of organism, source of the organism, if multi-drug resistance exists. While using all of the data sheets we have, it's important to know if you see these squared options, like here, for example, you can choose select multiple options. But if you have these radio buttons as options, like for example here, device association, you can only select one of these options. So here, clinical and laboratory criteria, I chose more of these, and then that's actually it. Another important point to highlight is we are expecting this. They are basically the definition criteria of pneumonia. So it's expected that for these criteria, to these events to happen in a timely manner, in a timely relationship, in order to form an infection. So we are expecting that these events occur in a timely relationship, not in a broad period of time. So we didn't define an exact day, exact period, but it's expected these events to happen within maximum in 7 to 10 days, with no more than 2 to 3 days between these elements. And the last section is for secondary BSI. If you follow up your patients for secondary BSI, you fill this part as well. If not, you should just select no follow-up and ignore this section. So device association, I would like to talk about it a little bit more in detail, because in real life scenarios it can be a little bit tricky to understand what device is associated to what infection, if there is a device association or not. First of all, we have catheters that can be associated to the sepsis / bloodstream infections, and we have respiratory support devices that can be associated with pneumonias. So you can only choose one device per infection. So a sepsis can either be CVC associated or PVC associated, cannot be both. And same applies to pneumonia. So the next question is, when do I know if the infection was device associated or not? Basically, a device association exists if the device has been present for at least 3 consecutive days on the day of infection or on the day before. The day of infection is always globally in our surveillance system means the day of first symptoms or the day of first positive diagnostic test. The one occurs first determines the day of infection. I know this sentence may sound a little bit confusing, so I would like to explain this with examples actually. Here you see in this box a patient had CVC on day 1, the CVC was placed, and on day 3 the patient had fever, and then day 4 CVC was removed. And then later it was determined the patient had sepsis. So the question is, when is our infection day? Infection day is day 3 because it's the day of first symptoms. And this is a CVC-associated sepsis because the CVC was in place for 3 consecutive days, day 1, 2, and 3, on the day of infection, which is day 3. In this example, patient had 3 days on and on CVC, and the fever started on day 4, which is our infection day. This is also CVC-associated sepsis, as the device was in place for 3 consecutive days on the day before infection day. So day 3 is the day before infection day, and on that day, the patient had device for 3 consecutive days. If the patient had CVC on these consecutive 3 days, but the fever occurred on the day 2, which is our infection day, it wouldn't be a device-associated sepsis anymore because the device was in place only for 2 consecutive days on the day of infection, which is 2 less for our definition. And if the patient had the first 3 days again CVC and the fever started on day 5, which is our infection day, it would be again no CVC-associated sepsis because no device was in place on the day of infection, which is day 5, or on the day before, which is day 4. So I hope it's more clear now with these examples. So another situation, if your patient had a CVC and PVC simultaneously, and you count these days as they are 12 hours minimum, both CVC and PVC days, and then patient later developed a sepsis after 3 days when both devices were in place. Would you count this sepsis as CVC-associated sepsis or PVC-associated sepsis? Is a legit question, and the answer is it's a CVC-associated sepsis. You should count it like that because, as we all know, central venous catheters they cause more likely to sepsis events compared to PVCs. So if your patient develops sepsis after catheter usage, both of them, you should associate the sepsis to the CVC. Here is another example so that I can explain you another tricky situation. In this example, you see the patient has on day 1, 2, and 3 no catheter, and then started to develop a fever. On day 4 and then day 5, blood culture was taken, E. coli was isolated. On day 6, CVC was inserted. Day 9, again, blood culture taken, no growth. And then on day 13, this time a blood sample showed Enterobacter cloacae. So in this case, some question may arise, like how many sepsis events do I have here? Which day is the day of infection? What organisms should I enter in my event, and if it's a device-associated sepsis or not. So the answer is that this is only one event. This is a non-catheter-associated sepsis, and the day of infection is day 4 because it's the day of first symptom, first sign of the infection. And the pathogens that you should count in the sepsis events are both E. coli and Enterobacter cloacae. So that shows us that 14 days rule, which suggests if you and if you enter an event, if you record an event, you cannot, if you meet an event, you cannot enter the same type of event of infection during a 14 days of period. If another, for example, here we can easily say actually that could be another sepsis event, that CVC associated sepsis and the infection cause was Enterobacter cloacae. But as it happened in this 14 days of period, you don't count that as a separate sepsis, but you count this as one sepsis, and you enter these two bacteria in the same event. So meeting an event in 14 days period doesn't change the original determination of the infection. We need a minimum 14 days plus a period without any relevant symptoms of the infection in order to enter the same type of infection again for a patient. So again, a quick reminder, there are a lot of aspects that we can talk about today about data entry, but there's not enough time. So please, if you have any questions and doubts, remember that we have in our webpage a surveillance protocol where we explain all these things in detail. We have an infection definition document that is as an extraction from the protocol paper where you can read the infection definitions in detail, and we have a manual for our online platform that you can get help from this document while using our online platform.